Welcome to the Fiat Career Coaching Podcast, a podcast focused on helping you encounter God through your work and everyday moments. Welcome to today's episode. I am joined by Msgr Spiteri. He is the author of a new book titled Newman for Our Time, and it's about a new doctor of the faith, Saint John Newman. And he was he was canonized, declared a doctor of the faith on November 1st on All Saints' Day. And this particular saint is one that I was first introduced to just by stumbling upon a quote of his about 10 years ago. And he spoke in that quote about how we were all given a mission, a unique mission from God. And I just really resonated with that because for all the clients that I work with who are trying to discern their vocation, discern what the Lord has called them to, it's just a reminder that nobody is without a calling, whether it be big or small, that the Lord in his divine wisdom has given each of us a specific calling that we are called to respond to. And so I was just thrilled to learn about this new book, and it's been a delight to get to know Msgr Spiteri. And I'm excited just for you to just get to encounter him and to learn more about this new doctor of the faith. So thank you, Msgr Spiteri, for being here.
You're welcome. It's my honor.
Oh, well, thank you. And so can you share a little bit about you and your story and what led you to St. John Newman?
When I was a teenager, I was an undergraduate at Oxford University, St. John's College. And that's where I discovered John Henry Newman. And I started reading him, got inspired by him. And so I visited every place he was at, whether he was living there or teaching there or ministering there, like St. Mary the Virgin Church. As I grew older, he grew with me, so to speak. And when I went back for my postdoctoral studies at Keble College, in the meantime, I had become a priest. It was a revival of that admiration and interest in him. In 1990, I was invited to be part of a panel which presented aspects of Cardinal Newman to celebrate his 100th anniversary of death. And that took place at St. Louis. There were a few things that I wrote about him at that time, and I kept in contact. Then out of the blue, I got a call and was asked to become the postulator, which means the attorney who writes a case for the Pope to decide whether he should declare the subject Doctor of the Church or not. And that invitation came from the bishops of England and Wales. Since I was already a voting member on the Historical Commission of the Dicastery for Causes of Saints, it was easier for me to do it because I dealt with this on a regular basis. Not about the doctorate, but about procedures altogether. And so I can honestly say I read everything that he wrote and has been published. Once I finished that, it was time for me to tell the bishops I did my job, I finished the argument, and now somebody else has to replace me because this is not my first job. I have other responsibilities here at the Vatican. And so I withdrew from that. And I put together this book based on what I read, reflected upon, prayed about, researched, and then every day writing for 1 hour something about John Henry Newman. And this is the product.
Wow.
Cardinal Parolin, who is the Secretary of State, We have known each other since the early 80s. Is a friend of mine. And he heard that I was writing this, and he said he'd be very happy to write a preface, which he did. I was honored by it. Um, he has received a copy of the book last Friday, and he's thrilled that it's published. I did ask him, was he thrilled about my name being on the front page or his name? As a succinct diplomat, he says, no comment. So we had coffee, and then we said goodbye.
I hope all those who are listening and watching can just get a glimpse of your sense of humor.
Oh, you need it when you work in Rome and have to drive like the Italians, organize chaos. The aim is not to be hit.
Yes.
As long as you're not hit, you're surviving. I used to drive like an American until somebody cut me off, got out of his car. He had run a red light, screamed, pounded on my car, and I said to myself, if I don't join them, I'll be taken back in a coffin. So I became very Italian in my driving. You would never identify a foreigner driving my car, which is myself. Yes, if there's a small opening, you squeeze into it. If there is a red light, that's suggestion. If it says stop, that means 1 second. I mean, you learn these things to survive. If it's parking, double parking, you make sure you park behind a police car who is double parked and join them for coffee at the local coffee shop. And
Okay.
they see it and they say, oh, a Vatican car. And I say, oh, yeah, it's mine. So no ticket.
Oh,
Ah,
wow, you
yeah,
learned.
I've learned.
So, how long have you been in Rome?
I started here at the invitation of Pope John Paul II to work part-time in 1983. I had no wish to come in here, work here full-time. And then in 2001, he called me and he said, under obedience, you have to come here to work full-time. And I have been a prisoner. The Pope was a prisoner of the Vatican, and I'm a prisoner of Rome ever since. And by the way, Newman was here. He studied in Rome.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Oh, he was ordained in Rome. He said his first
Mm,
mass in Rome.
okay.
Oh,
Huh.
yeah. Yeah, he has roots here.
Okay.
Even when he was not Catholic yet, a nasty Anglican, so to speak. He thought all of us were going to go to hell. Well, now he has second thoughts, obviously, and changed
Yeah.
his mind.
Yes. So actually, I would love for you to just to share a little bit about his journey for people who don't know him, about how he, I guess, converted from being an Anglican to, well, first he was like, for a short time period, he was like a Calvinist, and then he just transitioned many times, just but in search of the truth. But yeah, I'd love for you to just give an overview of his biography.
Yes, before I do that, I'd like to make a comment regarding Pope Benedict, the saintly Pope, who was a great fan of Newman. And if you want to understand why Benedict decided to abdicate and the way he went about it, you read Newman's life, with which he was very familiar. And that is in search of truth, which is another way of saying in search of the living God. And we don't do that in darkness, but with a light, as John Henry has said, lead kindly light. He followed that light. Benedict followed that light. They could not care less what people thought as long as they were following that light. And so John Henry Newman's conversion was a great scandal to the Anglican Church, and he paid a price for it from the Anglican Church and also the Roman Catholic Church. Benedict's decision to abdicate was also in a way a great scandal, but he had the intellectual honesty, the spiritual integrity, and that light lead him on to say, it's not a matter of what people think. It's a matter of what God wants me to do. Okay? Now, with that in mind, when you look at the life of John Henry Newman, I find it to be our own life, modern day. In fact, he was born in the middle of war. We live in the middle of wars, not war. There was an economic crisis. I mean, who can deny this about the United States? That's why I have a second job. The second job is to sleep. The first job is to work. I'm very successful in that job. The third thing was people were deciding what should be believed and what should be professed. We are in that situation. Some people thought there is no objective truth. He called them liberalism, the movement liberalism. We have those people that are trying to tell the Pope how to run the church, forgetting the role and the mission of the Pope. We have John Henry Newman experiencing economic collapse of his father's business. It's a galore here in the United States. We have a child who is sent to boarding school. He was studious. Kids made fun of him because he was not interested in sports. He was bullied. Even when he was in college, in Oxford, he was bullied. And yet he went on. He went on and grew and grew. Then we have a child, a teenager now, John Henry Newman, who could not make up his mind of what to become. I don't know about your schooling, but in my schooling, which is essentially European, by the time you reach what we call high school, or they call here lyceum, you have made up your mind what you want to be. Well, John Henry Newman had not made up his mind. His mother thought he was getting too religious and fanatical because of the touch of Calvinism. His father thought this guy needs to be reined in. And so in an angry, heated moment, he said to him, make up your mind. What do you want to be? And he chose the church. And that was the beginning of his ecclesiastical career. By now, he had already proven to be a very effective writer, at a young age. And this will expand and grow and mature as he got older until practically he died. Now, he became an Anglican priest at a time when the Anglican priesthood was not yet declared invalid, because Pope Leo XIII would do that almost a century later, 90 years later. Okay, he thought the Catholic Church was bunkers and that we're unfaithful. But as he grew up in the ministry, his first homily was the first step in the right direction. That's where it showed his coherent brilliance. Now, in Oxford, if you live there are a lot of people who are brilliant. When it comes to communicating what they know, they are complete zero. Newman was not. He was a great communicator. If there had been television at that time, he would have been an older version of Fulton Sheen. That's how powerful he was. There was that contact. Anyway, so he started preaching and started researching, because he was searching what is the real church. Why? Because he had converted to Calvinism. It did not last that long, but after 5 months, he discovered that his program of holiness was radically different than the program of holiness for Calvinism. So he left it and went in search of authentic Christian living. This never left him until the last moment of his life on earth. He kept researching. He started with the church fathers. He was fascinated by the teachings of the fathers before the Nicene Council, and that took place in 325 AD. And this year is the 1600th anniversary of it. And the Holy Father, uh, next week on Thanksgiving Day, will leave for Turkey to celebrate that. So it's a big deal. Oh yeah. Anyway, so he was not exactly thrilled with what he was discovering and uncomfortable, but he never gave up because he had sheer mental honesty. He started discovering that the original Church of England, the one established by Henry VIII, who loved to get married but not stay married, um, was not that different from the Catholic Church, because they only broke connections with Rome, with the Pope. But he thinks that the Council of Trent had overextended its boundaries. Be as it may, he continued, and the more he searched and the more he preached, the more he started realizing, well, maybe I'm not in the right church. How was this discovered? It was discovered through historical situations with Parliament and the Church of England. Yet we have to keep in mind that to this day, the monarch is the head, nominal head at least, of the Church of England. Okay, so immediately that puts us into the political arena. Now, the approval of bishops is also part of the process through which Parliament gives their approval. It's still like that today. However, Parliament did two things that were unacceptable to Newman. The first one is that they suppressed an Anglican diocese, where he said that is not the business of the government. It's a matter of faith. The second one is that England and Prussia, also a Protestant country, joined forces and established the Anglican, the episcopacy, the diocese of Jerusalem. And this made him go bonkers, that there is sheer interference. So he started analyzing this thing and discovered this is not what the church is all about. This is not what the original churches are about. So he was determined to help Anglicans in good faith become authentic Christians. And he was one of them. He did not do this alone. He did it with others who also studied there. Pusey is one famous person, studied in Oxford. And once he discovered that the Catholic Church is the true church with all its wrinkles of an old woman, but still the bride of Christ. Okay? He withdrew from Oxford, but he left a mark from which I also benefited, and that is when he was a tutor, a kind of an instructor in Oxford, prestigious Oriel College. He and his buddies said, wait a minute, we are not here only to educate the mind. We are here to educate the whole person, including their spiritual life. And this did not go well in Oxford and with what he called the liberalism members, or Trent, or, and eventually they ran him out of the city. Why? Because first he was given an ultimatum. You go back to our system of educating only the mind, or you resign. And he said that was God's providence that he resigned because he had more time to pray and research and write. Okay? The other aspect of it is that once he resigned his preaching ministry from the university, he withdrew to his little house with other people, and they lived almost like monks. Prayed together. He celebrated the Anglican Eucharist, their version, which we don't accept as valid. Um, and then he met, of all people, a little Italian missionary, Barberi, who is now Blessed Barberi, who spoke kind of broken English. And he received him into the Catholic Church. This was a big scandal. And even Parliament interfered. The Prime Minister attacked the decision of Newman. The newspapers went galore, calling him that he was a papist, always present there, undercover, proclaiming he had an allegiance to the Anglican Church, but in fact it was not. But he had already answered these questions because that group that became known as the Oxford Movement published 90 tracts, 90 essays. Essay number 90 was the last one. It was written by Newman. And it shows his intention of eventually departing from the Anglican Church because he could not come to grips with how disoriented, unfocused the Anglican Church had become. So he had tried to bring people back to God and failed. Now he had, every conversion that he had was associated with a crisis, medical crisis. The last one was when he was on a Mediterranean tour because he had kind of an emotional breakdown. So he and his friend went on an emotional tour. And then they left, went back to England, and he wanted to stay on, so he boarded a boat, and the boat was became stagnant around Corsica. That's where he wrote "Lead, Kindly Light," which is a famous prayer and hymn, still in the Anglican Church, apart from the Catholic Church. Okay? And he went to Rome. He was disgusted with what he saw. He made impertinent statements, including the Pope being the Antichrist. And then he left and went back to England because he was convinced God gave him a mission to convert the Anglican Church, you see. But he's still looking, is this what God wants or what I want? Blah, blah, blah. Eventually he discovered that is not what God wanted him to do. He wanted him to proclaim the Christ according to Catholic teachings and became a Catholic priest. The Church, Catholic Church, has a record at times of persecuting prophets like the people of the Old Testament. He was persecuted for this. Pope Pius IX was suspect of him. Pope Leo XIII, who succeeded Pius IX in 1878, was the one who made Newman shine. Why? Because Pecci, which was the last name of Leo XIII, was also attacked by the news media when he was bishop. So he knew what he went through. And he had read Newman, and he liked what he saw, including the development of doctrine and so forth. His apologia, his poetry, you name it. Ascent of truth. And he made him a cardinal soon after he became pope. And then Newman said goodbye to Rome, went back home, and died soon thereafter on October 9th, 1890.
Wow.
And that's, in a nutshell, the long story of Newman, who spent practically half his life as an Anglican and the other half as a Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
Now you can wake up.
No, thank you for that summary of his life. I know it's hard to condense it all because there's just so much there.
Yeah, it's like trying to put the water in a huge what would you call it, swimming pool into a small bottle. You cannot do it with Newman.
No, no, not at all. One thing I would like if you could also touch on is just how, with all of the tracks that he wrote, at one point he went back and rewrote them or rewrote a part of it to just to explain why the church, the Catholic Church, is the one true church. I thought that was very honorable of him, instead of just leaving
That's
it
intellectual
open.
honesty. Yeah, he
Mhm.
re-edited things, and he withdrew obviously his accusations about the Catholic Church and also of the Pope. You know, and he did that because he was searching for the truth. And if he was not honest, he would have said, "Okay, I made a mistake, but no one should know anything about it because I'm famous." We have to keep in mind that when Newman decided that God was calling him also to be a priest in the Catholic Church, he had to go to seminary. And he is a brilliant guy, well known, well published, sitting with people who are less than half his age as students. That requires great humility and not letting himself shine among them. That's humility. And so this light was burning bright in his life because he was not closing the windows of his soul. Allow what is in stays in, and what is out stays out. It was always overflowing.
Yeah. So, okay, you've given us a really good background of him. What about some of the things that he wrote? What were some specific writings that really touched you? You said that from the very beginning at your time in Oxford and throughout your life. Like, what were some key things that he wrote that just, yeah, have stayed with you?
Yeah, one of them has to be prefaced with Newman's wit. He was known to be a very witty and funny person. Somebody asked him, a big shot, "What do you think of the laity in the Catholic Church?" And he immediately said, "The Church would look very foolish without the laity." That applies to us today. Synodality is all about this involvement between the teaching church and the instructed church. That we are on the same journey, expounding on the same truth, applying the same truth, and deepening our understanding of the same truth. But there is a lot of resistance to it. Why is there resistance? Because I think people feel insecure. It's not because they don't want to obey. It's because their sense of security has been shaken up. And as we know, you have a child. When the child determines that he is going to hold your hand, no matter what you say, he won't let go. That's at times some Catholics are like that. All of us are children of God, and so we hold on to what makes us feel secure and won't let go. And if we don't let go, we cannot discover the other things. If your child did not let go of your hand, he won't be able to walk independently. I mean, nature itself tells us this, so keep that in mind. He spoke about the role of the laity in the church. Now, too many a time, I think there's a risk of misunderstanding him because some people say, oh, he's saying that the laity calls the shots. They have not read Newman. They don't know Newman. Why? Because Newman says there must be a church that teaches and another one that is taught and obeys. Okay? The laity. Many a time we forget that religious are lay people. Okay? That also the priests are not teachers. Only the Pope and the bishops united with him. So it's very interesting. We have some cardinals who are not bishops today. They are not teachers because you're required to be a bishop and you with the Pope to be the authentic teacher. Okay. Now, once he said that, he said, however, the laity has a responsibility not only of listening to what is being taught, but also of putting it into practice, which means experiencing that teaching. And that responsibility, excuse me, extends to the fact that they should inform the shepherds how things are and work together to get them better. So it's not a matter of who is calling the shots here. The teaching church is calling the shots regarding faith and morals. Everything else, it doesn't, it's not the issue here. But the way to live faith and morals, the majority of people are lay people. And they have to see how this way of teaching the truth, as you know, teaching in itself can acquire a variety of aspects, and sometimes it's not clear. So I have to tell them, what do you exactly mean? If you have a child that goes to school and come back and you say, honey, what did you learn today? I don't know. What is he saying? The teacher did not make himself or herself understood. That communication failed. And that's part of what the laity is all about. Because there is an axiom, lex credenti, lex orandi. The praying church is the church of those who believe. See, believe in what? In church teachings. So you have that. Secondly, you have the issue of some people using conscience as an excuse to do what they want to do. I am positive of this. And he wrote about this. The preeminence of conscience is paramount in the Catholic Church. But some people don't understand that is of informed conscience. Not what I think is right and what I think is wrong. But after studying, praying, consulting, reflecting, taking into account the church teachings as the map that lays out the roads to heaven, and then make a decision, that's informed conscience. And today, people think that because they are bright, or they think they are bright, because they are highly educated, and usually a lot of highly educated people have the level of a high school student when it comes to religion because they stop doing it. They become very involved, and the next thing is forming a family and everything else. They think that because they feel this or decide this, without taking into account all the elements that are required, they have an informed conscience. They are just fooling themselves. And that is paramount in our society today. I don't mind what people believe in, because for me, the church is like a huge swimming pool. As long as you are in that swimming pool, you're faithful. You don't have to be all in one spot to be faithful. You have to be in that boundary. And Newman certainly was and spoke about this. Another aspect that he reflected upon is the development of doctrine. There too is a risk of misunderstanding, because some people think that development of doctrine means new doctrine. That is not the case with Newman. Newman looks in a way at nature, at a child, and says, today the child is an old man, but he still has his roots in his babyhood. So does doctrine. It develops and develops and develops and becomes more and more mature, but it cannot let go of that childhood, of that source of truth. So while the doctrine is expanding, it is not changing into another doctrine. All right? In a way, he looks at the church as a huge tree. There's a trunk and then there are the branches. If those branches are not attached to the trunk, they die. But the fact that the tree produced branches, it developed. It became bigger, it became clearer, it became more magnificent. That's what the development of doctrine is all about. So it's not a matter of a new doctrine. It's a matter of a deeper understanding of the same doctrine proclaimed in the Gospels, in the New Testament. And the one entrusted with its authenticity is called the Bishop of Rome, and the group entrusted with that are called the bishops, the other bishops in the world, united with the Bishop of Rome. In other words, if the Pope says this and the bishop says the opposite, the Pope wins because they are not united with him. Okay? We have to remember. The other thing too is, we are impressed with people's intelligence. So I don't think we should be that impressed. Theologians are not infallible. They might be teaching good theology, but they don't have the gift of infallibility. Why? Because they are neither Pope nor the bishops united with the Pope. Scripture scholars the same way. Church historians the same way. Psychologists the same way. We do have Catholic psychology. Theology the same way. Philosophy the same way. We have to keep in mind that intelligence does not guarantee faithfulness. Even St. Thomas had to believe. Even Augustine had to believe. Even St. Anselm had to believe. Even Newman had to believe. Believe in what? In Christ's authentic teachings found in scriptures and the teachings of the authentic teachers in the Catholic Church.
Yes. I'm actually reminded of a story where I don't remember who asked him, but somebody asked Newman, if you had to toast somebody or give a toast, what would you say? And he said, I would first toast to the Pope. And then I don't remember the second one, but can you share that, please?
And then to the king, I think he said.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, at that time it was the Queen, little Victoria.
Yeah. And they were just really struck that he would want to toast to the Pope.
Well, he was fighting two fronts. First, the liberals, theological liberals, who thought there's no objective truth, and so there should be no teaching church, if you analyze it. There should be no moral code, because that is an established approach. So it's up for grabs with everybody. The other one were Catholics. When the Pope Pius IX defined the doctrine of papal infallibility, some called ultramontane, beyond the mountains, started saying, oh, whatever the Pope says is infallible. And Newman said, no, no, no. It has to be matters of faith and morals with the definition required to make that statement. Why? Because even in England, the Archbishop of Westminster was saying, what did the Pope say this morning? And then they tell him, oh, that's an infallible statement. It could be about the weather. It would be about hard-boiled eggs. It would be about anything. I mean, to us, it's stupid. To them, you see, it was a matter of emphasizing the authority of the Pope. But the Pope cannot have moral authority without having to bow his head to God's revelation. He too is bound like us. In other words, the Pope cannot one day wake up and say, oh, the Council of Nicene was wrong in saying that the creed, he became man, is correct. The Council of Chalcedon was wrong in saying that Our Lady is the Mother of God. I can tell you this now. St. Paul had to deal with the situation in his lifetime. He said, anyone that declares a gospel different than the one I have declared to you, including myself, should not be believed. So there is this ongoing challenge. How can I become more and more faithful? By following that gentle light. that actually we have received at baptism. It's called faith. That's why the candle is lit. It's interesting. At baptism, we are born to new life. The candle is lit. At death, we die to earthly life. The candle is blown out because we cannot grow further in faith and hope. In love, we are going to do that for all eternity. And these things, we should reflect on them because we find signs in nature through which God speaks to us and says, if you change the world to another planet, you are no longer the human being I created you to be. Because you have to develop other means to survive, especially air. And what is air? Spiritually, grace. What is food spiritually? The Eucharist. What is energy spiritually? God's help. I mean, we find that if we look at our bodies teach us all about God. And the Psalms, the heavens proclaim the glory of God. So does my creation and your creation. But the way we express that glory is by them being what they are and we being his sons and daughters. So it goes that way. And so Newman had these issues to reflect upon and struggle upon. He was also sued. You know that, right?
Oh no.
Oh yeah, he was found guilty of calumny. And
Oh.
even Protestants said this was the greatest injustice of justice. Even his opponents.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, that's all that there is. He was put in trial by a former priest who became an Anglican priest and he was bitter, and so he said that in public that Newman had lied about him, and this has damaged this Perunis, it was his last name, his reputation that affected not only him physically but also monetarily. And there was no proof of this. But the judge, who hated Catholics, said guilty.
Huh. Monsignor Spiteri, can you share a little bit about why there is such a love for Newman from so many different groups on both sides of the aisle, if I could use that term?
Um, if you look at Newman, if being handsome is a sine qua non for being holy, he would not qualify. He would not qualify on the outside. But if it's being a beautiful soul, he would qualify. I think that's what attracts people. They see in Newman and his search for truth, his courage, his perseverance, his brilliance, um, his friendship with students. This was part of the other aspects of how he got converts. He would befriend people, and they see his kindness, and they say, he left the Anglican Church and became Catholic. There must be something good about this. The church that we, as a society in England at that time, um, hate. This is part of being British, to be prejudiced against Catholic Church. And so when they see Newman, they discover that his motto as a cardinal, cor ad cor loquitur, heart speaking to the heart, really is present in his teachings. That's, I think, that's what I admire in him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I say to myself, if Newman bowed his head to God and to the Pope and to the Catholic Church, who am I to do otherwise?
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about that motto of his, "Heart speaks to heart"?
Yeah, the heart is symbolic of love. And that goes back to the Old Testament, right? But we still use it. You say to your spouse, I love you with all my heart, even though it's a transplanted heart, so to speak. Um, it's a symbol. It's not that the heart loves, but that's the symbol of heart. Two hearts joined together show love. Um, but the heart also is a place where Christ says people harbor sin. Okay? What Newman was trying to get across is my heart has been wounded with your prejudice, your antagonism, your almost hate of me. But my heart speaks to you of love and forgiveness. Heart speaking to heart. And isn't that what the heart of Jesus is all about? I love you even when you are still a sinner. Why? Because sin says to Christ, you are not number one in my life. So I think that's appealing. I think young people know that. They are always looking for friends. And too many a time they end up with the wrong company. And they think that they are their friends and then fall apart when they discover, wait a minute, I've been fooled, I've been used, I was foolish. But at times it's too late. And Newman says, no, it's not too late because let the heart of God speak to your heart.
Yeah.
Cor ad cor loquitur.
Yes.
I'm becoming fluent in Latin. I cannot believe it. 4 words.
Yes. So one thing that I found really interesting that you included in the book was it ever since Newman's death and when he became Catholic that every pope except for two of them have cited Newman's work?
Correct. Correct. Um, the two that did not cite him were Benedict XIII. He was too busy with World War One, and then John Paul I because he died within 30 days. All of the others since Leo. So we are talking, Leo was elected Pope in um, 1878. Including this Pope, they had Reverend Sister Newman, citing Newman. He was seen as a forerunner also of Vatican II in certain aspects. Actually, one of them is obviously the prominence of conscience, but another one is development of doctrine. So we are talking about, a guy ahead of his time, excuse me, and as what happened to the prophets of the Old Testament, their people persecuted them, and some people, including Catholics, persecuted Newman. So the popes, once around the end of the pontificate of Pius XII, they started discovering something kind of new in Newman's writings, and eventually influenced those who participated at the council, including their theological experts, one of whom was Joseph Ratzinger, Benedict XVI.
Yes. Yeah, it was interesting to see how many times Batzinger referenced Newman. I did not
Oh,
realize that
every
before.
time that he had an occasion after he beatified him to speak, he always brought up Newman. I loved declaring him blessed. I love his teaching. I mean, he, Pope Benedict was usually kind of a shy person, but he was full of emotions. It's just you give him 5 people and becomes withdrawn. He could not handle the crowd. But for some reason, with Newman, he never hesitated to share his joy about this great theologian.
Mm. Wow. Well, on that note, I highly recommend this book if you were
Oh,
just
thank you very much.
if you're interested in learning more about Newman, and just a little bit more about his writings. It is an interesting read, and for someone who like me, who's like I enjoy history, but I'm not like my husband is like a history geek.
Oh, I have to know him. I have to know
Yes.
him. We have to have a cigar together in
Oh,
a
he also loves
Roman
cigars.
cafe. In a Roman cafe.
He would love that too.
He's with the Air Force. Make him fly
Yes.
over.
Okay. I'll text him right
I'll,
now.
I'll give you a break.
No, I'll have him take me with him.
Uh,
But I would
don't be
say,
foolish. No, you let him be here all the 3 hours with me, and then you come back for 10 days alone
oh, smart.
to get a break.
Yes. But yeah, so for someone who is not a history a geek, I don't want to use that word geek, but I still enjoyed this book because it was yeah, it was just interesting to learn more about his life and all that he went through, and that his experiences they weren't, I don't know. Sometimes when I think of saints, I imagine them like they had no problems and they
Are you
just
kidding?
followed the Lord. But he had problems left and right, and yet he persevered and he just still kept seeking the truth.
Yeah,
And that was just so inspiring to me to learn that about him.
he's
So,
wonderful.
so thank you.
Thank you. I enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope that um, the influence of John Henry Newman grows, especially among university students, because they most probably are the leaders of the future, and that the laity in general and the clergy in general will read Newman as a friend who struggled to imitate Christ and ultimately was given the crown of glory. Because that's what we are all about.
Yes, absolutely. Well, on that note, thank you so much again
Thank
for
you.
your time.
Thank you.
And God bless you. And thank you all for listening. And remember, when you say yes to God, you change the world. See you at the next episode. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please click the like button, subscribe to my channel, and share this episode with someone that may enjoy it. Please also consider giving the podcast a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thank you, and God bless.